Hello everyone, today we will be unboxing another statue for this week. Here we have is a statue from the manufacturer's PCS Collectibles. Is a one-to-one life-size bust of the character Chun-li, gold exclusive version from the series Street Fighter. As always, before we take the statue out of its packaging, just in case you didn't know, Street Fighter is a Japanese fighting game that first made its debut in 1987 on arcades, that was later ported to the MS-DOS and PC Engine or TurboGrafx-CD. The game being developed and published by Capcom. Chun-li, the Interpol officer and martial artist, first made her debut in the second installment of the franchise, Street Fighter II: The World Warrior, which was released in arcades in 1991. Then ported to other platforms in 1992. Street Fighter II being considered and regarded as one of the greatest and influential fighting games of all time. The character designer Akira Yasuda, or Akiman, who originally drew the concept art for the character Chun-li, as shown here, before being finalized as the Chun-li we know today. She then later became the staple of the series alongside Ryu, with different installations having different design, also becoming very popular and also being known as the first playable female fighter in a fighting game. So with that being said, here we have is Chun-li's box, as you can see here. So there is no box art, so it's basically just this cardboard. So as you can see here, it does come in two boxes, so without holding you guys back, let's just take Chun-li out of her packaging and see how the statue looks. As I stated earlier in the video, it doesn't really come with a box art, but we can see here it does actually come with this cardboard on the top portion of the styrofoam, where it does have the text where it does say Chun-li 1-to-1 scale bust with the Street Fighter logo, Capcom's license, and also a PC Collectibles logo at the bottom. So after unstrapping this kind of tedious little strap, we do get this little thin, the actual, little thin cardboard you do get. Where we actually see here, we have is this little compartment with this little box here on the side, where this is, as I stated, is the gold exclusive version directly from their website. So you do get this little exclusive, well, I'm not really certain if the original version comes with this box, but you did get additional features with this, where you can kind of see the logo on the top, but in the inside here you do get a little bit of a gloves, I guess it's used for when you are cleaning the statue, but I kind of already have these white gloves on me, so I'm not really going to be putting these on. But they're kind of like, your typical gloves you kind of buy off of Amazon, so nothing really too special about that. What we do get here is the certificate of authenticity, which is in this thin gold plate. So again, I'm not certain if I would assume the original version does come with this, where you do see here is this little QR code, which I did scan and actually leads you to their website. So I mean, you can just go on their website anyways. But here we have is the Street Fighter logo with the Chun-Li, same text we saw with the little cardboard it came with, but you can kind of see it's kind of imprinted on this thin gold plate here. So you can kind of display this. You can see the bottom here does have your edition size out of 50. Again, I think the other version has a little bit more of a mount, so I'm not really certain again if this only comes with the gold exclusive. Yeah, so you do get a coin. You have a 1 in 50 chance, so I am not the winner of that gold coin, so probably someone else has it. But you can kind of see here you do get this cleaning kit for the statue, where you get this thin, kind of like a makeup brush with PCS logo kind of stamped on top of it. So you can kind of see it's kind of a thin, like I said, kind of a makeup brush. So I kind of already have this, so it's not really something I need, but it's something that you could use if you want it, or when you do get the gold version, you do get it. Sadly, again, I did not get the gold coin, but with that being said, let's just move on to the actual statue. So here we have is the first box for the statue, where we do see here it comes with the little accessories for the base that it does come with. Alongside we see here is the head wrapped and the arms wrapped with this plastic and also tissue paper protecting the statue so it doesn't get any damaging during transit. So just like similar what we see with Prime 1 Studios statues, kind of similar we see here with the statue here for this life-size bust. And after removing all of that, here we have is how it would look when you have it packaged in its styrofoam. And honestly, my first reaction is it looks a little bit eerie or kind of uncanny because it's a life-size bust, so you kind of have this realistic texture around the figurine, and again looks, you know, a little bit weird. But we do see here this is how it would look, and it looks nothing really comes damaged, so it is a positive. And as you can see here on the side, I will show you guys this later on in the video, but this is the little, you know, pieces for the base. And again, as I stated, a little bit uncanny seeing Chun-li's head in this box, but don't worry, we will be taking a closer look of that later on in the video. Is the second box you do get when you do order this life-size bust, and quite similar to what we got with the original first box that I unboxed earlier. Here we can see here it does have this little strap to secure the styrofoam from opening up during transit. What you do get is this similar little cardboard where it is labeled number 2. Let's just remove this styrofoam so we can get a better look of the contents of the box. So here we have is the second box, where you can see here it does come with the main torso of Chun-li alongside with the base, and you can see here it's also covered with protective plastic. I don't really see any tissue paper, so I'm guessing it was only for the head and the arm. But we do see here it is quite well protected, and so far nothing really came damaged, so that is a positive. So let's just remove all these accessories and see how the figurine looks put together. So here we have is the base, and here at the bottom of the base is something we're not really going to be seeing later on because it's going to be placed down. Here we have is more text such as Street Fighter, Chun-li, Gold Exclusive, your edition number, PC Collectibles, Capcom, and the license for it. And you know, again, this is not really going to be something we're going to be seeing later on in the video, but here finally we have is the figurine's base, or should I say the statue's base. And we can see here it's actually stylized in this kind of like a pottery, or a traditional Chinese pottery that we see here when we go to or in the Chinese culture, because they're kind of like real big into like that fancy pottery and stuff. But we see here it has such a unique, you know, design, kind of reminiscent to, like, as I stated earlier, Chinese pottery, where we see is like a lot of flowers, kind of these branches, and a little bit of leaves on those branches. And we can kind of have is this little swirling, kind of like almost like wind pattern around the base, which looks quite well done. This isn't actual ceramic, it's just, you know, polystone or resin, I think. So it is a little bit, it feels a little hollow, but there is a bit of weight to it. So again, not ceramic, it is polystone. But they did a really amazing job sculpting this. It looks quite like, it looks like it would be ceramic, but it's not. We do see here on the top portion of it, we have is this insert where the torso does get connected. And again, sadly, this doesn't really come with an assembly instructions guide, so you're gonna have to just put this together. But I'm just showing you how I put it together. But again, the paintwork around it looks really good. So far everything's been good. I have not seen anything bad about it, but I think the pattern and the texture work around this base looks really well done. But with that being said, there's nothing really too much to add on the base, so we're going to be moving on to the next part. So here we have is the main torso for the life-size bust, and we can see here we have is Chun-li's classic outfit, where it is, I think, supposed to be a Chinese dress, but like kind of a modified version of it, where it's not necessarily like the exact dress we see with Chinese wear, but it's more like a, what do you call, a kwai pao? I apologize if I said that wrong. But yeah, you see here we have is her blue attire, where you can kind of see by her stomach area she has this really embroidered design here with a dragon, which looks really nicely done. I love the way it pops out of that white cloth material. Going up, we see here is like this little design here that her outfit does have, where you kind of see is this kind of this slick gold around it. I did notice though that it does feel a little bit fragile when it comes to the fabric, where you kind of see a little string is sticking out of that top portion of it. So it's kind of like a delicate material, but we do see we have is this little knot on the top portion of it with the gold going all around her collar here, and where you can see the insert for her head sculpt on the top portion of it. But again, it looks, you know, really nicely done. You can kind of see the sides of her puff sleeves here, where in the inside you can kind of see where you insert the arms. But again, the outfit looks really nicely done. The fabric does feel a little bit fragile, like I could kind of see this kind of getting scratched or kind of, you know, damaged easily. That's one thing negative I can say, just judging by the way it feels when I first handle it. But the overall design looks really nicely done. It looks like it's straight out of the game, or it kind of does feel like a cosplayer's outfit. But you do see here we have is this long zipper where you can actually, I think, remove the entirety of her outfit. I would advise against that, because doesn't really feel like it could be removed. You could remove it, I think, because of the way the zipper is, but I would advise not to do it. But here we have is the other side of her puff sleeve, and again, looks really nicely done. You can see the way it looks. You kind of see it's kind of like a little bit, you know, not necessarily like ironed out. It kind of feels a little bit creased up, but again, that's because it was in a box, so it's kind of understandable. Here we have is another section of her collar here on the top. Again, overall looks really nice. And only negative I could say is about the material that the cloth does feel. It does feel a little bit fragile, where if you do scratch it, you could accidentally rip the fabric. That's the only negative so far I see with the outfit, but overall outfit looks really nicely designed, and I'm really loving the embroiderment they did with the dragon on her white cloth by her stomach area, which looks really nice. So with that being said, there's not really too much else I can add to the outfit. Let's just move on and add to the other accessories. So going back to the base, here we have is this little dragon handle, where you can kind of see is this kind of like almost like this traditional dragon, compared to Western's view on dragons, where they're evil. I think in the Chinese culture, they're more of like a strength or like a luck, almost like empowerment design. So the dragon here being symbolistic of like her being a strong character, which is really nicely portrayed here on this statue. We can kind of see here the paintwork around it looks really nicely done. You can kind of see the blend of grayish, kind of darker black, kind of like a bronze color, which fits really well, especially with the base looking how it is. I think this adds a little bit of a more pop feel when it comes to the base I mean. But yeah, you do see here it does come with this little insert with the magnet here on the top that gets connected to here and here. have is the other handle, which is the opposite end of the base, where it would complete the entire look of the vase or the base. And you can see it is quite similar, so there's not really too much of a difference. I guess this is just for the other side, but again, the texture work, the paint work looks really great on this. You can see the magnet here on the side. The magnet is a little bit bigger compared to the other one, so when you are connecting it, I think you can kind of tell the difference. So just make sure you connect it to the right holes, and you can kind of see this little peg here on the top as well, or at the bottom. And yeah, overall sculpt looks really nice. It does feel a little fragile, so just be careful when you are handling this, and just make sure you don't drop it. So you do connect this magnet and this insert into this hole here and in this section here. So as we can see here, shining a light into this hole here, we do have this little insert where you do connect her hand. So just make sure when you are connecting it to be extremely careful with it. Here we have is this arm where you can kind of see this long insert here on the top portion of it. And again, just be careful when you are connecting it, so to make sure everything is inserted well and aligned. Is Chun-li's right arm, and we do see here she has a little bit of muscle on her, so it's a pretty nice little design there, because she is a fighter, so you obviously assume that she's going to have like these strong muscles, but because she's a kind of a female, it's not that big. And she is made out of silicone, where you can kind of see it kind of gives it a little bit of texture on her skin. And I don't know if I'm able to show you guys, but you can kind of see when you do like kind of press up against the statue, you kind of see it's kind of a little bit soft. That's the best I can show you guys, but yeah, she is quite soft to the touch. But her wrist cuffs here, where you can see the spikes are kind of feel a little bit more like a polystone material. So you could rotate this around, but you can't really remove this sculpt here. It's just there. So just be careful with it. And you can kind of see here, because again she's made out of this silicone material, they kind of have this a little bit realistic hand, where it is flexible as you see here, but I would advise don't really be flexing it too much, because it kind of feels like if you bend it too much, you will break the silicone from her hand. While the texture of skin looks quite realistic, I do have to say that her fingers are not the best. I don't know if my camera could capture it. Probably on the next hand I can show you guys better, but her fingers do look a little bit like not the best made. The nails look somewhat decent. I think her thumb, honestly, compared to her other fingers, look kind of like the best sculpted, but the rest of her fingers don't really look as good. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about, her hand being a little bit of flexible and soft. But I think the overall texture work on the silicone of her skin looks really good. But I think they kind of failed when it comes to her fingers. But I think I could show you guys that better with the other hand sculpt. But for this hand, I think they did a pretty nice job with the way it's posed. So let's just move on and insert the other arm sculpt. So going down to this side of the puff sleeves, here we can see the other insert. So again, when you are connecting it, just make sure you line it good and make sure you don't really kind of scrape the paint too much. So here's the arm sculpt of her left arm, and you can kind of see a little bit of, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like a bit of muscle on her. And there's something I did want to show you guys this that I forgot to show you guys on the other. Here's the front of her palm. Again, texture work looks quite realistic, especially since it's made out of silicone material. You can kind of see it looks really nicely done. You can see the fingers, the creases look really good. And again, her thumb here, probably the best area where they sculpted it, where it looks really nicely done. You can see her nails on the top, but the top of her fingers are not really as good. I'll show you guys that later. But one thing I did want to show you guys, that it does have this line here on the inside of the silicone, which I don't know if it's paint or it's something that they placed on the inside, which makes it seem like a vein, which looks extremely detailed. I didn't really capture that with the other hand sculpt or the arm sculpt, but you can see here this is like a really nice touch here, which looks a little bit weird because it's a statue with a vein. I mean, but it still looks quite realistic, which looks really nice. Here's her wrist with her spiked wrist cuffs here hanging from the side, where you could actually move it around, but let's just insert this here and get a better look of it once it's connected to the body. So this is how it would look when you have it connected to her left side. And when you do connect, just make sure you be careful with the fabric here to avoid bending anything or getting anything caught up. But again, we kind of get this similar texture when it comes to her skin from the statue, which looks, again, really nicely done. It is soft to the touch. And like I stated earlier, there is lines here on her flesh to make it like seem like she has veins. A really nice touch. Her cuff wrists here are actually a little bit loose, so it kind of gets really close to the fabric here, so I would kind of like not really move it around too much to avoid like clamping onto the fabric to rip it. The bend here on her wrist is quite well done. You can see it's quite detailed and looks actually really amazing. But going up to her fingers, I think you can kind of see it a little bit more here. Well, before that, you can see her fingers are flexible and don't really like touch together with the other hand sculpt. But here on the back, you can kind of see her nails are not really the best done. Just like I mentioned earlier, I think they could have done a little bit more work when it comes to her fingers. Well, it's not like I want to see like hyper realistic hands, but that's the only area I would fix when it comes to the statue. And you can kind of see it's almost the same size as my hands, but because I'm a male, it's a little bit more bigger. But they could have done a little bit more work when it comes to her nails. But her fingers and the skin on her knuckles here look really nicely done. Honestly, I don't really think the nails is too much of a bother. I think it's still a quite fantastic sculpt here when it comes to her hands. So with that, let's just move on to the final piece, which is her head sculpt. So as I stated earlier, there is no assembly instructions guide, but I found it a little bit more easier to actually connect the head sculpt to actually unzip her and kind of disconnect the fabric here from the back portion, where you kind of get a view from the inside of her body. And with that, you can actually slide the head here with this insert in, which made it a little bit more easier. I do say to be careful when you are connecting it because it gets a little bit caught up to the neck, the collar there. Just kind of bend the cloth a little bit, but don't really put too much force on it to avoid breaking the fabric. But this is the way I actually found it a little bit more easier to connect. So after you connect the head sculpt, you can go ahead and reconnect and zipper up the back of her outfit. So here we have is Chun-li's head sculpt, and it actually looks, again, a little bit uncanny. For this being my first ever life-size bust, I didn't expect it to look this realistic. Here's her side profile, where you can kind of see her little curvature of her nose, her mouth, her eyebrows, her eyes, the hair, which is actually kind of embedded in the silicone of her skin, where it kind of has this synthetic hair kind of on her flesh, I guess you can say. But here's her other side profile, where you kind of see is her cheek, the other side of her nose, her eyes, her hair being brushed to this side. We can kind of see is her little tied buns on the top, and we can see is her little earring on the side. But going to the front of her back to the front of her face, I think they did a pretty nice job here. Again, her face is also in that silicone based material, so you can kind of see it gives off a little bit of texture around her face, where you can see her lips are a little bit painted pink. They are quite soft as well because this is made out of silicone. The texture work looks quite nice. You can see she has the two little nose holes from her nose. You can see her small little nose on the top there. And it is soft to the touch, so you could actually like flex the nose around if you want to. I wouldn't really flex it too much just to avoid breaking it, but you can see it is soft. Going up to her eyes here, where you can kind of see it has this little painted design like we see with her the character's design. She has these little eyelashes, and her eyes are, I think this is kind of like a glass eye, I think. And you can kind of see they did give it veins, which is quite realistic. You can see the pupils in there kind of reflecting off my light. We can see her brown eyes and the little design there, which looks really uncanny. It still looks really nicely done though, I could say that. You can see her eyelashes too as well. Here's how it would look when I turn off one of my light. And you can kind of see here, it's not too much of a glare, but you do see here the quite amazingly done detail they have around her skin. It is soft to the touch, so when you do feel it, it is quite soft. You kind of see is a little bit of, kind of like a little bit of blush, where you see a little bit of red on the silicone, which kind of represents skin quite nicely when you get cold or when you're a little bit flustered. You do get this little bit of red around. Here we have is her synthetic hair, which is kind of like inserted into the silicone. Here's her large earring on the side, and again, similar to the rest of her silicone based material of her flesh, her ears are flexible. You can see here I'm flexing it a little. Especially it being her ear, I would be careful with her earring just to avoid like pulling it or snapping it. But here's the back, where you see is her double hair buns on the side with a little bit of white ribbons behind here, with a bit of a gold tip on each of the ribbons, which I don't really, they just hang in there. So here's the back of her neck going up to her hair. Again, it looks a little bit weird having the way it looks, but they did a really nice job with this, especially how realistic it looks. There's a little bit of debris on her hair that is not dandruff, it's just when it was in its box. But you could see she does have these double hair buns where you do see there's a little bit of the synthetic hair tied up in a bun. But just make sure you be careful with that, because the buns feel like they could accidentally like pull off of the little cloth it has. Here's her other earring, where you see her ears are flexible, just like I showed you guys earlier. Yeah, but overall, I think they did a pretty nice job with the facial sculpt. Quite different to her prototype design where we saw it looked a little bit more paler. Here they gave it a little bit more of a normal textured face, I guess you can say. But with that being said, that should be the entirety of the figurines life-size bust. So this is where we'll actually end off the video. Alright guys, so that's gonna be the end of this one. So that was Premium Collectibles Studios, or PCS Collectibles, a 1-to-1 life-size bust of the character Chun-li from the Street Fighter franchise. So all in all, I gotta say is this is my first life-size bust. So as someone who doesn't really own a lot of busts, it's a little bit uncanny to see a realistic portrait of a character like right in front of me. So I kind of have a little bit of mixed feelings about how the statue looks. But personally, it looks really great. But again, because it's in this realistic design, it looks a little bit weird for me personally. So as someone who really likes the character Chun-li, I think this is a really well done piece. So there is a couple of negatives I can say about this statue. The cloth does feel, or the fabric of the clothing does feel a little bit fragile. Throughout the process of doing this video, I did kind of scraped it a little off the gold section, and it kind of like a little bit of damage it did get on her fabric. So that's because my nail kind of hit it. So I could say that the fabric is a little bit delicate, and I feel like it should have come with an assembly instructions guide just to show you how to connect each piece. The synthetic hair is also a little bit delicate, where some of the strands of hair kind of like comes off a little. I don't know if you noticed it in the video, but some of the strands are kind of like sticking up, or it doesn't really bend into place. So I could kind of see that being an issue later on in the future. But yeah, but with that, I think the entirety still looks absolutely amazing. The silicone of her flesh looks really well done, and the addition of those lines by her arms, creating that vein design, looks really good. I do feel a little bit mixed on her fingers. But overall, I think the statue looks really nice. I do know, yes, I know her main assets, which is her legs, are not there. So I know some people were like, if it doesn't include her legs, I don't want it. Maybe PCS Collectibles will come out with the exclusive version for those who bought the life size, which will be legs. Imagine, but I don't think so. But I did actually hear from a video that someone did ask a worker from one of their booths that they are planning on a Cammy life-size bust, which if that does come out, I probably will get that as well. But honestly, I would rather see a life-size bust for Ryu. Having Chun-Li and Ryu together as they're like the main staple for the franchise, which I think that will be a lot better to see a Ryu. I know they did make a bust of Ryu already, but they only have his head. But imagine an entire body of Ryu with his like gloves and his headband. I think that would look a lot cooler than Cammy. Apologies to the Cammy fans, but I still think Cammy will look interesting as well. But anyways guys, that's gonna be the end of this one. If you guys have any opinions on the statue, do leave it below. I do know someone in a forum said that it looked like Jackie Chan Chun-li from City Hunter, which, I mean, I think the prototype looked more like that than this how it actually looks in the final design here. But what do you guys think? I'm interested to see what you guys say. But if there's anything I did miss, I probably will make an update video and post it on my Facebook. Or if there's any other angle you want to see, I will take a picture of it and upload it on my Facebook, and or should I say my other social media. But I do plan on maybe buying a couple other life-size busts if something interests me. If they do a Ryu or they do a Kami, which I heard they say that they're thinking of also making one. I'm not sure if they are, so don't quote me on that. But anyways, guys, that's going to be the end of this one. So if you have not actually played Street Fighter, it's a fun game. But if you want to go pro, go to those channels, because I'm not a pro. But yeah, so that's going to be the end of this one, guys. I'll leave you guys off with the figurine rotating in 360 and other close-up shots. So as always, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yeah, but I think Ryu would be better than Kami for a life-size bust with this kind of like realistic design.